It's Paul Marsh, and I'm delighted to say that I've been joined by Olympian Lina Nielsen. Lina, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm really, really good, thank you. Delighted to be talking to you. How was training in South Africa?
Oh, very intense. It was really warm. We got, the intensity went up and it was a very good camp. I opened up my indoor season recently and it showed that that camp paid off.
Are you looking forward to the season?
Not so much the indoor season. I've got a love-hate relationship with the indoor 400 meters, but I'm definitely looking forward to the outdoor season once you get me back to the hurdles.
It's always like the calm before the storm, isn't it?
Yeah,
You
it's
know that
nice.
you have to get through it and you have to do it, and then you get to do the stuff you enjoy.
Yeah, it's always good to break up the year, get that competition mindset again in the indoors, and then have the most fun outdoors.
Well, I recently spoke to Montel Douglas, who is better known maybe as Fire from Gladiators, but a former Olympian like yourself.
Mhm.
Is that maybe in a few years' time something you'd like to do?
Gladiator. I
Yeah.
think I'm more of the chase kind of person. I don't think don't know about those physical shows.
Okay, well, we'll nominate you for the chase. We'll put you on
Okay,
that one instead.
I'd love that.
We're going to be talking about multiple sclerosis and the fact that, there's not a lot of people really know about the condition. And unfortunately, it's a condition which is affecting a lot of people, isn't it?
Yeah, so there's around 150,000 people in the UK who have MS, and it's around 135 people who get diagnosed every week. So that number will grow and is growing. But yes, it is a widely misunderstood condition. And so that's the whole premise around this campaign. I've launched this campaign and with support of Sanofi as my platform. My platform as a sports person only goes so far. So I'm really glad that I've got their support on this because we just really just want to get the word out, raise as much awareness as we can around MS to just break down those misconceptions and make it easier for people who live with MS.
Why is this a subject that's so close to you?
It's very close to me because I live with MS. I got diagnosed when I was 17. So that was 11 years ago now, and it's come a long way since then. But I remember that diagnosis period being very difficult before, during, and after. And one of the reasons for that is because it's really hard to understand exactly how it is to live with MS. Just to give a backstory, the MS is an autoimmune condition, and there was a survey actually done by Sanofi, and a lot of people assume it's a muscular degenerative condition. It's not, it's an autoimmune condition. So your immune system will mistake your nerve cells for not being yours. It will attack these nerve cells, and then that can lead to inflammation, which can lead to a variety of different symptoms. And because of that, there's no one rule that fits everyone with MS. Like you can have such varying symptoms, and within these symptoms, varying severities. And these symptoms can be very strange. So sometimes it's really hard to explain. So one of the first symptoms I had, I was actually 13, was I had weakness down the left arm. So it meant that I could move my left arm, but not move my left hand. So I remember explaining this to a nurse, and I just got met with these confused looks. And in that way, because it's not so understood and not well known, it's really hard to explain and to know what it can look like. And then that in that way it makes it really hard to receive that diagnosis because you then have to go through a series of tests and things like that. So I think awareness is really, really important because the more that we can understand how different it can look, the more that we can listen to each and every single patient who has MS.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think with any condition, people are so assuming that it's one size fits all
Mm-hmm.
and all the conditions are the same for everybody. But the same as any condition that anybody has, it is very, very individual and it can affect people differently as well.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there. So there's actually three different types of MS, and within those types, there's active and inactive MS. So there's just so many different boxes that you can be put into, very hopefully large boxes. But so the type that I have, so there's three types. There's primary progressive, secondary progressive, and relapsing remitting MS. The type I have is relapsing remitting MS. So you can have periods of relapses, so where you get those attacks, and then you can have periods of remission. So the inflammation from those attacks goes down, and you can make almost full recoveries, 80% recoveries, 60% recoveries in some extent. We just don't know to what extent you can have those recoveries in. And then I always box the symptoms into two different categories. So there's visible symptoms and invisible symptoms. And this is where it can become quite complex. And this is why awareness is really important. Visible symptoms, obviously, you can start to see if someone says they've got foot drop on their left side, you can see that foot drop, or you can see balance issues and things. But where it becomes quite difficult for people living with MS is invisible symptoms. So one of the most common ones being fatigue, and that can really affect your life in the workplace. How you can explain that to employers without having to explain the whole history and science behind MS, that becomes very difficult. And so if we know more and we understand a bit more, and to know actually a lot of the time these symptoms are invisible, we can start to just be a little bit more courteous towards people who live with MS and really listen to their experiences and how their life is basically affected.
Again, I know everybody deals with their conditions very differently, but how is it you find best to manage your conditions?
Oh, that's a good question. So I would say to lean on your support group. So one of the difficult things with MS, because it's so individualized, you can feel like the only person who's dealing with this symptom. And some of the time that is true. Like you might be the only person who's felt this symptom at this severity for this long and this kind, and so it can feel really lonely. And one of the problems that people face with MS is being diagnosed and then being sent on their own way. So then you do feel even more lonely. So one thing I would always say is find your support group. Look out for those people, and this is why social media is so great. Look for those people who might be dealing with the same thing you're dealing with. One of the charities I advocate for the most is MS Together. They have a great social support group. They have one-to-one counseling and group counseling. And then also another thing I'd say to someone is really get yourself heard. A lot of the time you'll just get that letter through the door that says your diagnosis and then nothing else. Like really look for the numbers to call, and this is where the MS Trust is really good as well. They've got great resources for that. Look for the number to call to get your next follow-up appointment and get your story heard by the medical professionals. And I'd say look for the resources that are trusted, so MS Trust and MS Society.
There are two sides to this, aren't there? If you're the person that has MS and you are dealing with this, it's important, like you say, it's important for you to find the people that you can talk to, that you can lean on, and everything else. But if you're at work, it's important to let the people know who you work with about your condition and how you manage it. And then from the other side of it, if you are, if you own a company and you have somebody working for you, it's important to educate yourself about their needs and their conditions.
Yes, definitely. And I think, one of the things I'd love to see, and hopefully we can do this with this campaign, is, for employers and companies to really understand not even just MS, but a lot of autoimmune conditions have the same kind of symptoms. So fatigue and brain fog and cognitive problems as well. So the more that you can, as an employer, understand that someone with a chronic autoimmune condition, how they can feel, the more empathetic you can be, and really try to make that workplace a little bit better for them. I think that's so important. And this is where awareness is crucial.
Do you think that this can be raised even more than just outside of individuals and outside of work and small companies? Do you think that this can get raised to a national level, maybe like the government or something like that?
It's a good point that you mentioned there, actually. So one of the things that we're doing with this campaign, and I'm so grateful for, is we will actually go into Parliament and advocate for people living with MS. So one of the things I said, it's really hard to explain symptoms, and you really have to know a little bit about MS to kind of even begin to understand. And so one of the things that's really hard for people with MS, if your MS is a little bit more progressed and your work life does get affected, one of the options for you is to get that government support. But a lot of the time when people with MS go into these appointments, they're not getting listened to, because again, the symptoms are so strange and very hard to explain and articulate, to the point where they're often accused of lying. And I've heard so many stories of these appointments being traumatic for people who live with MS, and it's really, really horrendous to hear, because again, we just don't know enough about it as the public to really even begin to understand. So this is one of the things I'm really looking forward to, is going into Parliament and then hopefully changing those conceptions about MS.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is absolutely amazing. If there's somebody listening to this right now and we've woken them up and they're thinking to themselves, I need to find out more about this. I need to educate myself, or maybe even the rest of the people that work in our team, we need to educate ourselves. Where would be the best place for them to go and do that?
I would definitely say don't Google MS, because that's one of the worst things you can do.
Don't Google anything.
Don't
It's
Google
always bad
it.
for you.
Yeah, definitely go to trusted resources. I would direct people to MS Society and the MS Trust. They have great information. They even have pamphlets that they can send to your doorstep for you to really understand this condition.
Well, look, Lina, thank you so much for talking to me. I really do appreciate it. Best of luck with the rest of your campaign because, like I say, it is such an amazing thing that you're doing. And also, best of luck with the rest of your, well, hopefully not, the indoor season won't last forever. That's the only sort of consolate I can give you. Summer is possibly on its way soon, possibly.
Yes, I'm really excited for that. So thank you so much for giving me this space to talk.